Hello, Kamas here. Today we're going to be looking at an exciting release from the house of Bortnikoff as part of their fourth collection. They were kind enough to send me a sample set. Thank you for that. Thank you, Robert. So today we're going to be focusing on only one though. So the first time I received these, I sprayed all three of them, and then Symphonie de Neroli is the one that captured my interest there. I found it to be the most complex out of the three, not necessarily the best out of the three, but the most complex and interesting to study. I didn't want to do like a first impression rather bad, because usually with naturals, what happens, at least for me, is that once I spray it the first time, my nose is quickly overwhelmed with the naturals that I'm most familiar with, and I miss the undertone and the other nuances. So for example, the first time I tried Symphonie de Neroli, I found that the floral were out of balance or too prominent, and there was nothing else balancing in it. But then the more I wore it, and then I got a more consistent experience from one day to the other, I found that it was a lot more balanced than what my first perception was. So that's why I decided to focus only on Symphonie de Neroli for a couple of days and then come out with a review. Another thing worth mentioning is with my experience of Arèche Ledoré and then Bortnikoff is that fresh samples that I receive and I'm able to test it right away, even after a couple of days, compared to when I actually buy the bottle and I try it or I wear it like a couple of months down the line or a year down the line, I see subtle differences, not a drastic change in the scent profile, but a slightly different experience in terms of how it wears on my skin. I tend to find that, and I'm not sure about the maceration and maturation process out of Arèche Ledoré or Bortnikoff, but what I find is that when I receive the samples, for example, there are some notes that are much punchier, sharper around the edges, although the concoction is beautiful. But then down the line, couple of months down the line, I find them to be more integrated and smoother. Some of the sharper edges become more round. So I'm taking that into account when I'm sampling these fresh releases here. So in the case of Symphonie de Neroli, though, I can see that happening a lot because it is a complex fragrance, but also on my skin, I get four distinct phases. I can see some of those stages blurring the lines and becoming more integrated, a smoother version of what I'm getting here. Not to say that this one is not coherent, it is, but then there are some like defined stages that I get versus something that flows really well and then integrated. And I'm going to be touching on that when I describe the stages that I get on my skin. The opening is your really interesting, familiar set of fresh, zesty set of citruses. Here I get a smooth, velvety, fresh, refreshing set of citruses. The most prominent accords that I get out of the set of citruses is lime and a sweet mandarin-like accord. I think he lists clementine as one of the notes. Now I think he uses the ambergris and then some set of musks to kind of round and give it that velvety, citrusy accord. Is really well done. It's going to remind you of other composition that utilizes that signature citrusy velvety tone that you get out of Bortnikoff, like amber cologne or musk cologne. So you definitely get that at the top, but it's quickly overwhelmed by the set of floral bouquet. Here the floral bouquet is made of bittersweet neroli, but then the neroli is further supported in its bitter facets by green vetiver with slightly woody accords attached to it. I don't get much of a smoky vetiver here, but it's more of a fresher green vetiver with slightly spiced woody accords attached to it, and that supports the neroli in these bitter green facets. Now to kind of balance the bittersweet floral combo between the neroli and then the vetiver here, uses a sweet velvety floral core that is coming from the jasmine sandback. It pairs really well with that one, add a natural sweetness to the fragrance, but also plays well with the citruses at the top. In the background though, still in the first phase, in the background I get a slightly fermented oud that is coming in, but it's not that prominent. It's way in the background. The first phase lasts about 30 minutes to an hour, and what I noticed while I was wearing this one is that the stages on my skin are in rapid succession until it reaches the third stage and the fourth stage, and it kind of slows down and quiets down and it remains like that for the rest of the wearing. The second phase, that's where the floral aspect are going to tone down a little bit and then let the oud shine a little bit. Now here, like I said, it's not going to be a barnyard oud. It's really where wearable is more of a balsamic, slightly fermented oud that adds a woody tone to the fragrance, and it takes a little bit of prominent facet in the second phase. And then there it is paired with the mossy vetiver. So I get a combination of woody balsamic, slightly fermented, with the mossy vetiver attached to it with traces of the floral bouquet still from the first phase. And the second phase, I get more of a warmer tone because of the oud and the mossy vetiver compared to the fresher opening with the citruses. So beautiful contrast between the two first stages. Now, while transitioning to the third stage though, I get the introduction of some spices, dry in nature. It reminded me of something that is slightly dry, peppery, like a dry cinnamon, not a sweet cinnamon, like a dry bark, like cinnamon or core, peppery tone attached to it. And I didn't know what was giving that impression of spice until I reached out for some of the ingredients in my lab here. And it's coming from the combination of the Tolo and Peru balsam that he has listed in his note breakdown. Now, although the Peru and the Tolo balsam are listed as base note in the pyramid here, you have to understand that raw materials or notes or cores typically have a top, a mid, and a dry down. So I can definitely see the top note, the dry, spicy nuances from the balsam influencing the mid of this fragrance here. So I get slightly peppery, dry, cinnamon-like, not sweet cinnamon, dry bark-like cinnamon accords that is giving that slightly peppered, slightly spicy nuance in the mid or the second phase here, and is adding that to the woody oud here with the mossy vetiver. With the slightly dry spices, the oud is going to tone down, be a background note there, and then it's going to be mostly centered around the mossy spiced vetiver note that I get. And that third stage is short-lived before it transitions to the fourth phase, where it's mostly the balsam playing here, but in a quiet way. So essentially what I get is a slightly dry, powdery, spicy nuances with tone of floral nuances, but the mossy vetiver playing in the background, but is mostly quiet in the fourth phase. Now, to quickly put together what I get out of this one, 4 main stages on my skin. The first phase is centered around a floral bouquet, bittersweet neroli combo with the vetiver that is slightly woody, slightly spiced, but not smoky, more on the greener side. And then it's quickly balanced with the jasmine, velvety, sweet floral accord there. And at the top, you can get a quickly vanishing set of sweet, velvety, fresh, zesty set of citruses that mainly on my skin, I get the lime and then the sweet clementine. And it transitions to the second phase where the florals are going to tone down. The oud is going to shine a little bit more. But here the oud is not barnyard, it's slightly fermented and is backed by this mossy vetiver. And then while it transitions to the third phase, you get an introduction of dry bark cinnamony, not a sweet cinnamon facet here, is more of a dry, peppery, slightly bark cinnamony facet that is added to the second phase, while the oud goes into the background. Is going to be a mossy, slightly spiced vetiver. The third phase is short-lived. It's going to transition quickly to the fourth phase where it's going to remain like that. And it's going to be centered around mostly the balsam, and it's going to be a quiet transition there. And it's going to be centered around something that is dry, slightly woody, balsamic, slightly powdery with really faint floral nuances, and the mossy vetiver in the background. That's pretty much what I get out of the fragrance. Like I said in the beginning, this one can benefit from more time on the shelf. I can see the balsam picking up a little bit and then extending the longevity of this fragrance. I can see the floral aspects, especially the jasmine here, blending much smoother with the set of oud and then the vetiver combo. And I can see them stretching a lot more further in the dry down here. So I'm really excited to try this one down the line and see how it comes off in terms of experience. In terms of performance, I can see this one getting better with time, but as far as what I've been able to experience with the sample, I go with 4 sprays on average, and what I get out of this one is between 6 to 7 hours of longevity, and then it gets really quiet after 5 hours when the fourth phase comes into play, where it's like the quiet balsams. And then projection is really quiet for the first 1 hour to 2. I get a decent projection, but it's not too loud. And in terms of seasonality, I can see myself wearing this one throughout the year. It's nothing that is heavy, but it's nothing that is too weak either, so it can play well in all seasons. Now, in terms of situations where you can wear this one has an exotic feel. So I would say if you are going to a formal event where you're trying to portray that exotic, different, unique feel, you can definitely wear this one, but I don't see this one being worn casually. For those who are interested in gender classification here, I think this one is unisex. Although people might be concerned with the floral aspect, I'll have to let you know that The first hour or so is heavy on the floral. It's going to be the Neroli and then jasmine sandback. Although it's balanced with the mossy vetiver at some point in the dry spices, it is really floral for the first hour along with the citruses. Now for people that are not bothered by the floral accords, I would say this one you can definitely rock it if you're male and you don't mind florals. Definitely unisex in my book. I don't see any facets of the composition that would deter a woman to actually wear this one. I think is really well done and right in the middle. Now one thing worth mentioning is that while I was testing this one, it did remind me of a couple of fragrances in his lineup. For example, this beautiful signature citrusy opening did remind me of amber cologne and musk cologne, but also the mossy vetiver tone did remind me of one of these releases in the first collection. If I remember correctly, it was Bonheur, and I didn't enjoy that quite much because the mossy vetiver combo that was in Bonheur had a slightly vegetal feel to it. In Symphonie de Neroli is a little bit different. You get hints of that type of vetiver combo there, but it doesn't go vegetal. On my skin, I think is being helped with the floral aspect, but also the dry spices that I get. So I definitely love Symphonie de Neroli here. Now, price point on this one, it is a spendy fragrance. For 50 ml, you'll be shelling around $350 on his website, excluding the shipping, and then on Lucky Scent it'll be $355. So definitely spendy here. I think in terms of complexity, the layers that I'm getting out of this one, it is well worth it, but you have to definitely love this one to spend that kind of money on a fragrance. So I would say definitely don't blind buy. Get a sample set and then test it and see if it's something that is resonating with you. The only thing that is kind of skewing my experience here is that the dry down, the fourth stage, the third and fourth stage are kind of a little bit underwhelming to me. It's kind of quiet and then almost one-dimensional, but I think that with time and aging is going to get better. Some of the notes are going to get more prominent, but as of now, from the sample, the third and the fourth stage are a little bit underwhelming. The first and second stage are just outstanding to wear and a good experience in my opinion. Now, if you tried the latest release from Bortnikoff, let me know which one is your favorite. For me, from briefly sampling the three and focusing on Symphonie de Neroli, that's my favorite. I doubt that would change even after spending time with the other two. Not to say that they're bad. In terms of being captivated and in the complexity, Symphonie de Neroli is definitely my favorite there, but I'm going to be reviewing the other two. If you're interested in seeing what I will be reviewing next, let me know which one you want me to review next, Zemfira or Sir Winston. Let me know and I will do that. Again, thank you for watching. Please comment, rate, and subscribe, and then take care. Bye.